The University of Arizona takes steps to welcome back students and prevent COVID-19 from spreading on campus.
We can assure you that we're doing everything we can to reduce risk.
Faculty and students speak out about their concerns.
It's possibly putting people's lives at risk.
And how Arizona's public university system as a whole is responding to the challenges.
If we had a vaccine, it'd be a whole lot easier. But testing and tracing, those are our weapons right now.
Hello and welcome to Arizona 360. I'm Lorraine Rivera. Thanks for joining us. Months after the coronavirus cleared campuses and schooling went online, the dilemma persists: how to safely bring people back when the disease still poses a serious threat. In less than a month, the University of Arizona will put its plan to the test. This week, we learn more about that strategy and the risks. Before we begin, we should note that Arizona Public Media is a part of the U of A. Turning back the clock, March 6 marks the last time the University of Arizona bustled with the comings and goings of 45,000 students and 15,000 faculty and staff. Then came spring break, and everything changed.
ASU now moving all of its classes online. And just into our newsroom tonight, yeah, you know that logo. We have just learned the University of Arizona is doing the exact same thing.
Like many institutions, the U of A moved most of its operations online.
Thanks for making it through these tough times.
And took up the fight against the pandemic, with researchers quickly developing antibody tests for COVID-19 and novel contact tracing methods. Tools designed to help the greater public and create a safer environment for students who are expected to return August 24th. But instead of picking up where it left off, learning will look drastically different than it did last spring. Offering a mix of in-person and online instruction, the university will let people return in stages, beginning with classes where in-person attendance is deemed essential. To oversee the process, the U of A tapped former U.S. Surgeon General Richard Carmona. We asked Carmona more about how the university has spent the last few months preparing for the fall semester.
The physical plant is ready to open, and that would include some of the modifications we've had to make in some of the buildings. For instance, we've created a dormitory, which is an infirmary. So should youngsters get sick on campus, they have a place to go where they can be quarantined so they don't spread the disease, but yet still take their classes in the rooms that they're in. We've had to look at other things too, the airflow, for instance. We're looking at outside locations to maybe have some classes because it's safer outdoors, but yet in Arizona, that's tough because it's hot. So possibly putting undercover tents with ventilation inside. And most importantly in the classrooms is decreasing the class size, making sure that there are appropriate barriers between the professors and the students, and that spacing is maintained, and ingress and egress in all classrooms and hallways are controlled.
Are shutdowns part of the inevitable should the worst happen? There was one university that said if there's a death, then we would have to shut down. Would that likely happen here?
Well, we're hoping it does not, but the president and I and our incident command team have discussed this frequently, that what would be the trigger points should we have to close. And those trigger points would be that the community gets saturated, that there's very few resources outside. And even if it appeared that the university was safer, we still couldn't chance it. We'd shut for that. If we started to see that there was any increase in disease within the campus, the threshold would be very low to shut the campus down and just go all digital. And maybe the most important part is that the students and faculty and staff that come back to campus, they have to agree to be a part of the success of the university. That is, comply with all of the public health instruction that we give them.
What about large groups in classrooms? Because we've heard from professors who are concerned that they're required to have so much of their instruction offered as in person. Meanwhile, students are given the choice. Are the professors still getting a say in all this?
Yes, the professors do have that. And President Robbins has pointed out that any professor who feels uncomfortable can move to a digital platform to teach the classes. But we have a number of professors that want to come back to class, and they just want to be assured that there's the appropriate spacing in class, that students are not coming to class who are sick, coughing, have a fever, and so on. So one of the challenges we get, and I probably should mention it here, Lorraine, is that, I have parents have called me and said, well, Surgeon General Carmona, we're concerned. Can you assure me that my son or daughter is not going to get infected on the campus? I can't. We can assure you that we're doing everything we can to reduce risk. But as I point out to the parents that have called me and the president, that if your son or daughter stays home, unless you keep them, sequestered in a single room and they don't go out, they're probably going to go to the store. They're going to see their friends. They're going to do some recreation. There's risk no matter where you go. And depending on where you live, you could live in a very high risk area. You could live in a low risk area. We're doing the best we can to keep the campus as a low risk area. Also recognizing students have to be part of this solution, because we know when at the end of the day from class, they go out on university, they go into town, they go recreate with their friends. And the danger is they could bring disease back if they don't practice the good public health practices wherever they are, on campus and off campus.
When students are on campus, who's going to monitor and enforce all this? Are you hiring more people to stand outside of classrooms and dorms?
This is not going to be, punitive. It's not going to be a police state. I mean, we have enough stress in society today. And we said, and we don't want our professors to have to be, the gatekeepers. We're hoping everybody will conform with the regulations. But the president said, if students fail to comply, if they go to class and they won't wear a mask, or they fail to sit where they were told to sit, they will be asked to leave the class. If they don't comply, the president said that they can be expelled because they're placing everybody else at risk.
Last week during your virtual press conference, you and Dr. Robbins alluded to this being a matter of life and death. You've said the numbers aren't quite leveling off, that we shouldn't become complacent, yet you remain optimistic. Sounds a bit like mixed messaging, is it?
No, it's, I would say you've hit the nail on the head. We are cautiously optimistic. Dr. Robbins and I both are physicians. We recognize that there are variables that we can control and variables we can't. So we are hoping that through our education, through our inspiration, that people will adhere to these practices. But the president, in no uncertain terms, said, if we see there's a lack of conformity to what we say are the best practices, or there's an increase in disease on the campus, or if resources become strained in community, that's a signal that we would close down the university physically and move to a digital platform.
On top of academics, the university must also navigate how to support the 500 student athletes on its rosters. Like professional leagues and college programs nationwide, the U of A is in the process of adjusting its protocols to keep players safe on and off the field. That likely means delaying the start of the season for fall sports, as we discuss with Athletic Director Dave Hickey.
Currently, we are examining a number of different options for those schedules going into the fall. It's very likely that we'll delay the beginning of the fall competitions by a few weeks to give some more time to put protocols and procedures in place.
I know you've had some athletes on campus, particularly football players. Can you kind of describe to us what's been different, given that there is a risk associated with the physical contact for football players?
Well, sure. During the summer months, we have brought back about 85 of our football student athletes. Some that reside in Tucson and some that have come back to the campus and have been training. They've been training in just conditioning exercises, weightlifting, really preparation for the season. We're not in full practices, and those would not begin for several more weeks. But we have designed a number of safety measures and protocols because of the concerns that we all have about health issues. And we're looking forward to those coming together here in the next few weeks.
As I understand, you've had 3 instances of positive tests for COVID-19 thus far. Is there a plan in place if you're into the fall season and there's a flare-up? You have other athletes who become sick.
Well, that's certainly a concern across the country of if there is some type of a hot zone that occurs on a campus. We're very confident in the protocols and the procedures we have, the abundance of testing, the health leadership, the scientific information that we're receiving here locally is really key to our way to bring student athletes back to a very safe environment.
There will be mingling with players from other states. So what's the protocol? Will there be quarantine after a test, after a game? Give us a sense of what that looks like.
Well, that's what we want to have, a coordinated testing program so that all of our competitors, the 2 teams, the 2 opponents that play would fall under similar testing standards. And then they would report the results of those tests so we all understand the measures that have been taking place, and that all of the student athletes that are competing with each other are in a safe area, in a safe zone.
The program has about 500 student athletes. You've talked about personal responsibility as a component in this. How do you go about regulating behavior off the field?
Well, again, we have a very robust education program for our student athletes, sharing the responsibility, allowing them to see and understand how important it is that their behavior falls within the standards that we have outlined. This really is a shared responsibility. We feel on campus, in our buildings, on our practice fields, and in our practice courts, we have excellent protocols. It is personal responsibility as our student athletes, our staff, quite frankly, all of us leave the campus to act in an appropriate manner. If we can't do that, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to have athletics. We're going to be, again, pausing and pulling back.
What's a fan experience going to be like as we head into the fall with football, volleyball, and soccer?
Yeah, I think that's still somewhat unknown. We want to try to have a fan experience. We don't know what level that will be. We're still going through a number of different planning exercises. We're observing some of the professional sport organizations that are beginning to open up their facilities, and we'll slowly begin to bring fans potentially to the table. But we've planned for everything from no fans to about a 50% capacity. I don't really foresee anything larger than that at this point. And I think as we're trending today, it would be considerably less than a 50% capacity if we were able to bring fans into the stadiums and arenas.
Any difference with donors or fan base thus far? Are you hearing from fans who are saying, I'm not ready to throw in my support just yet, given the unknowns?
Well, we've certainly had a lot of conversation and dialogue with our fans and our ticket holders. They've been incredibly supportive. They understand that this is really a huge experience for our students and our student athletes, and it's a big part of their experience. But we have a number of different plans available to our ticket holders to, again, wait and see how things progress and how they feel comfort-wise. And we are offering refunds. We're offering the ability to flip those tickets into future tickets. Again, very fan-friendly as this kind of fluid situation develops.
Empty stadium stands and auditorium aisles all speak to another issue stemming from the pandemic, declining revenue, largely from anticipated drops in enrollment. In April, President Bobby Robbins announced it would furlough most employees to help offset projected losses, estimated at $250 million.
Clearly, we're going to have to do some sort of furlough program. It'll probably be tiered.
After some revisions and multiple delays, the furlough program is now set to take effect August 10th. Students, faculty, and staff critical of the university's approach are making their voices heard through the Coalition of Academic Justice. The group formed days after furloughs were first proposed and counts several hundred supporters. Among them, journalism professor Celeste Gonzalez de Bustamante, who says the coalition wants administrators to reconsider furloughs and be more transparent about the reentry process. She says their efforts are having an effect.
Members of the Coalition for Academic Justice have met with the senior leadership, that is Liesl Folks, our provost, and the chief financial officer, Lisa Rolney. We've met with them. We plan to meet with them again. Another good thing that has come out of this whole process is an ad hoc committee that has been formed. It's called the General Faculty Financial Advisory Committee that was formed just a few weeks ago. And they're in practically everyday negotiations with the senior leadership on hopefully coming up with a much better plan than the plan that we have right now.
There have been reports of layoffs, and of course, we know the university issued a furlough plan. Has the coalition offered any sort of alternatives to that would make this work for the staff on campus?
Sure. The Coalition for Academic Justice came up with its own alternative furlough plan, and that alternative furlough plan was meant to sort of get the discussion going, so that we could come up with a more comprehensive, compassionate plan that would take away some of the burden that's being placed solely on employees. And then there are other besides the coalition, for example, the Eller College of Business has also issued an alternative plan that looks at some creative ways to take out loans that would lessen the burden, again, on employees that are really carrying the brunt of trying to meet this shortfall right now.
The current furlough plan impacts 7,500 positions and saves about $70 million. The university's Office of Business Affairs says since March, senior leaders have had more than 100 meetings with various groups on campus to discuss their ideas. On August 3rd, the Faculty Senate will propose additional revisions that administrators will consider before furloughs take effect. But the coalition's concerns also include the potential risks of returning to campus too soon.
The Coalition for Academic Justice issued a survey, and it found that 2/3 of the respondents don't feel safe coming back to campus. What are you hearing from the people that this would affect?
We're hearing from graduate students, faculty, staff members, that if we were all to come back, even as President Robbins had said about a week ago, if 20,000 of us were to come back, there's great concern of people being exposed to the virus, COVID-19, and that's not a good plan. It's possibly putting people's lives at risk. For what reason? Why can't we have a more sort of a public health plan, or a plan that really puts public health as the priority? And we are encouraged by this new staged plan that's been announced a couple days ago. But what we're concerned about with that plan is it's still not clear exactly how we're going to move from one phase to the next, what metrics are going to be used. Again, getting back to the transparency issue, the university really needs to be transparent about what kinds of metrics are going to be used. Is it going to be based on county data, statewide data, the Johns Hopkins reports? We're just unclear about that right now.
The U of A has said that with reduced amounts of people on campus, increased in testing and tracing, and increased sanitation measures, that they're hopeful that that would create a safe enough environment. Given those items, when do you think that yourself and members of the coalition will feel safe enough to return to campus?
I mean, that's the thing about COVID-19. It's creating this very uncertain environment, right? What we're concerned about is 6,000 or so students going and living in the dorms. They might be taking classes online, but they're not going to be just staying in their dorms. And in fact, if they are just staying in their dorms, that could be a problem as well, right? And then we've also been hearing that some faculty and staff are feeling in a position that they have to come back for a variety of reasons. We even know of staff who are being told that their jobs will not exist if they don't come back face to face. So these are, some of the concerns that we have.
The option to return to campus or learn entirely from home briefly had added consequences for the university's international students. At one point, it potentially meant choosing between staying in the U.S. or returning to their home countries. While that's no longer the case, as Tony Paniagua reports, some international students remain uneasy as they enter an academic year full of uncertainties.
Weeks before the start of a new school year, the scene on campus is calm. But for international students like Santiago Castillo, stress bubbles beneath the surface.
You have to consider many things. First, we're in a different country, but we still have our roots somewhere else, right? So I have a lot of friends from China, from Spain, from Italy, who were very worried even before we were worried about what was happening in the world.
Add into the mix an immigration process with many moving parts. Items such as visas, permits, legal fees, and the political whims of their guest country. In early July, the Trump administration said international students would not be permitted to remain in the country this fall if they only enrolled in online classes, even if it was the only option offered by their university due to the coronavirus. The University of Arizona joined others in a lawsuit, and the proposed guidelines were soon dropped by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
Right now, for example, as the U.S. is becoming a more unwelcoming place for international students, there are a lot of other countries who are actually trying to attract the students who are being, pushed out of looking into the U.S. as an option to study.
The United States had about 1 million international students in 2018, the largest number in the world. Arizona State University leads our state with about 13,000 international students, followed by the U of A with approximately 3,700. On average, each student pays more than $36,000 per year in tuition, nearly triple the rate for in-state residents, in addition to other costs. If they can legally work, international students can only clock 20 hours a week at a job affiliated with the university. And with many closures due to coronavirus, their options are limited right now.
The reality is that most of the international students, particularly at the grad level, we depend on our jobs on campus to sustain ourselves.
Castillo began his journey at the U of A in 2015.
Before moving here, I was working at a university in Mexico. When I decided to pursue a PhD in international education, I thought that it was a good idea to, walk the talk.
He planned on graduating in May, but the pandemic pushed that to December. Castillo and a colleague at another university are working on a research project about international students. And when he's earned his PhD, he hopes to land a job somewhere where he can use his experiences and research to help other students and organizations.
I don't mean for universities to know exactly each personal story of each international student, but at least try to acknowledge that we might be facing different challenges and that we might appreciate getting some extra attention and extra help.
To carry out its reentry plan, the U of A received approval from the Arizona Board of Regents. The board oversees the state's 3 public universities. All plan to offer some form of in-person instruction this fall. From Chairman Larry Penley, we learn more about what guidance the board has provided.
Step number 1, test. Isolate. We'll trace contacts with individuals on campus. And of course, what we're also doing is insisting on social distancing, masks, as well as extensive cleaning of these campuses on a continuous basis.
Are waivers at all part of this conversation where if someone says, I don't want to come back to work, nor do I want to go back to school, and I'm assessing the risk on my own and saying that I'm just not participating?
For students, what we have is an opportunity to be online, in person, synchronous online, and some sort of hybrid combination of these. So students have a lot of flexibility and a lot of opportunity if they become ill or if they just become afraid of the situation that they're in. For faculty, staff, and others on the campus, there's obviously social distancing, a requirement of masks, but as well for people who have immunosuppression, who are at high risk for contracting the virus, there's going to be an opportunity for them to work remotely as well.
You mentioned testing and tracing, and for some people that's been uncomfortable because they don't want to share too much about their personal, their lifestyle or their beliefs. Where's that balance between public health and privacy in all this?
Well, certainly privacy is a big issue for all of us, and we are threatened, our privacy is threatened a lot of times these days, or at least that's the way we feel. So tracing is actually something that we've used for a very long period of time. It's an old weapon in the public health arsenal, used in the flu pandemic in 1917 and 1918. So it's something that's just a part of what we can do. If we had a vaccine, it'd be a whole lot easier. But testing and tracing, those are our weapons right now.
It sounds like you're hopeful in all this, but what is your read on how this pandemic is really impacting higher education?
Certainly, there's a huge impact. The expenses associated with this are enormous. So one might think that going online actually reduces expenses. It doesn't. It increases expenses for the equipment, the software, a whole set of issues are there. Further, the extent to which we've had to purchase special supplies for our inventory on each of the campuses has also been expensive. And we know as well that some students are just going to decide that they're not going to come to our universities this fall, anywhere in this country. As a consequence of that, we're anticipating, in addition to increased expenses, that revenue will take a hit.
What gives you hope in thinking that in a few months from now, maybe if there's a vaccine, we'll be having a different conversation?
The whole educational environment is something about hope. It's about new careers, new opportunities. It's about young people maturing and having a chance to learn and develop themselves. That's the kind of environment that a university is really about.
For most students, college as they knew it changed last spring. But for incoming freshmen, it's all they'll know for the foreseeable future. Even the U of A's New Start program that helps freshmen get familiar with campus went fully online this summer. It's how we met Diego Salcedo, Noreen Qureshi, and Celeste Mesa, all graduated from high schools in Tucson. In their own words, they shared what it's like to begin a new chapter of their lives during a pandemic.
I don't think this is what I envisioned at all for being my first year of college.
The online format is not the worst thing in the world. Like, I don't really like it as much as like in person, but so far I've made it manageable and I've been able to keep up with school.
I've noticed that the ways I'm connecting with people, I'm reaching out to people are very different than what if I had been on campus.
I am at home and I feel like maybe I won't be utilizing as many resources, but I understand the cost that college has. I mean, it's college, it's a higher education system.
Payment isn't simply just paying for your books or tuition or classes or the content, but the whole experience of being a college student, going on campus, meeting new people.
Even though it's a little bit weird, New Start and like the U of A and everything online has been a lot of fun.
The news, you turn it on and every day it's a different story. So I think we can account ourselves to have the same type of story that's going to be ultimately changing.
I was very limited in my high school, so I hope that can change and that I can learn more about everything.
Having the ability to travel, explore the world, something that I won't probably get the chance to do for a while, but I'm excited to see the world when I can, when the world is ready for me.
I hope to get the graduation day that I didn't get to have my senior year of high school, where I get to walk across the stage and receive my diploma, but that's just something that I'm going to have to wait to find out.
That's all for now. Thanks for joining us. To get in touch, visit us on social media or send an email to Arizona360@azpm.org and let us know what you think. We'll see you next week.